Hello, everybody. Welcome in to the NBA Front Office Show. Plenty going on around the world of the NBA to discuss today. I'm Trevor Lane. You can find me on Twitter at Trevor_Lane, over on Instagram at Trevor Lane NBA, joined by Keith Smith at Keith Smith NBA. Before we get too far into anything, because I forget to do this every single time, driving myself crazy, go check out our Clips channel. I'm going to put a link in the description below over on YouTube. We're just getting that going. So for those of you who like more short form content, you'll be able to find some of our breakdowns there on the NBA Front Office Show Clips channel. Again, going to put the link in the description. Go check it out and do us a little favor. Maybe hit that subscribe button. We would appreciate that. Keith, I didn't forget this time. How are you doing, man?
Good job, man. Yeah, it's so funny. We get so in the habit of what we do, like diving right in, and then we forget things, and then it's invariably it's like seconds after we finish recording.
Always.
Like, we forgot, X, Y, and Z. But yeah, I'm good. I was a little under the weather yesterday, but bouncing back today, feeling pretty good. So thankfully it wasn't anything serious. I think my allergies caught up to me.
It happens to all of us, and but you know what? This is the time of year when there's not a ton happening. Especially while we all kind of wait for the Kevin Durant situation and all that. So we've got enough now that's kind of built up over the last day or two here. But let's kick things off with what everybody was buzzing about yesterday, and that's Draymond Green wanting a max extension with the Golden State Warriors. And that sparked this huge discussion, both online and offline, about whether or not Draymond is worth that and whether or not the Warriors should be willing to pay that. So what are your thoughts, and what does this mean for the Warriors cap situation? We know that they are already paying a ton in luxury taxes, though so far they've been willing to do it.
Yeah, I think we're seeing some things start to come to a head a little bit for the Warriors. I think we saw that with losing Otto Porter Jr. and Gary Payton II in free agency. Joe Lacob has already come out and said, I don't know if we can keep both Andrew Wiggins and Jordan Poole. I ran some really rough math. I did Locked On Warriors the other day, and some really rough math. If they were to max out Wiggins and then give Poole like anything close to the max, they'd be over $500 million into salary plus taxes plus penalties. So yeah, that's a lot of money that they to pay for a team, obviously, and we're going to get there eventually, of course, with the rising cap and the rising TV deals and all those things. It's going to happen, but just to be there now is not quite where we're at. So I think this is Draymond basically kind of saying, hey, I'm extension eligible here in another week or so. Take care of me. Why not me? You took care of Steph, took care of Clay when they were free agents. I want taken care of too. Now I want to be very fair to Draymond too. He wants his max, which is not truly the max. Like he wants a 4-year. He could opt out and do a 4-year, $138 million deal. But it sounds like he is, saying like, I don't necessarily need maybe that much, but we'll see, where this goes. If he starts pushing, I need the max. I mean, there's going to be somewhere between 10 and 15 teams with cap space next year. And, it's as hard as it is to envision Draymond Green playing anywhere else. Maybe it does come down to, all right, you don't want to pay me what I think I'm worth. I'm going to go somewhere else and try to win with another team or something like that. So I definitely do think it is something to keep an eye on.
So he's at $25.8 million this coming season, and then the season after he has a player option for $27.5 million. So is he looking to essentially decline that player option and then start a new 4-year deal, or would that be added on to, assuming like he would pick up that option and then have 4 years after that?
Yeah, and they could do either way. If he opted in and did an extension on top of that, that comes off of that last year's salary. So that is, let's do some math here on the fly. Equals that. That'd be, quite a bit less than his max, because he's obviously 10-year guy. So he'd be looking at, $33 million ish in that range in that first year salary. And then that would, bump up by the 8% raises from there. Or, he could insist upon it. I don't think he's going to be able to say, I opt out and, give me the full max that starts at, about $46.5 million next year. I love Draymond, and I think he's a great player. I just don't know that anybody's giving him that, especially not when he will turn, what,
He's
33?
32 right now.
Yeah, he'll turn
Yeah.
33 in this season. So that just seems a little unlikely to me. So, yeah, it seems like he's basically saying, hey, give me that full max extension that you can give me right now.
So
And
opt in.
he's probably, yeah, either I'll opt in and we'll do it that way, or I'll opt out and we can add 4 years on to the end of this season.
Right.
If that's what you want to do, either way, it sounds like that's what he's open to doing.
Which, if I'm the Warriors, it would be the latter. I would want him to opt out, because otherwise you opt in, you're tacking on another year.
Yep.
And at 32 years old, I don't know if I want to be paying Draymond. Now the cap goes up and all of that,
Sure.
so that's a factor here. But still, paying Draymond in what, 2028, that kind of money, that's
I don't want to be paying him 40 to 50 million dollars when he's 37, 38 years old.
right. Yep. Yeah. This isn't PJ Tucker that we're talking about here. Come on.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's funny because he could be by then, but PJ Tucker's only making the mid-level.
Right.
So we're not even talking. Yeah. I mean, they're talking
But
5 times as much money in a single season.
Let me ask you this. Is Draymond worth it? Like, let's say the Warriors get into a battle here with him. It doesn't go well. And he says, you know what? Forget it. I'm going to go out on the open market. Is he a max player on the open market?
Probably not.
That was what I was thinking.
Yeah, you could, because so max next year, if he opts out, would be about $46.5 million.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think anybody's going to give him that. Would a team maybe say, "Hey, we'll give you $100 million over 3 years"? That I could see.
Could happen.
I could see that happening, and then you're roughly in that range, right, where the Warriors are at. Because he's saying, "I want 4 years, 140 right now. 3 years, 100 million. 30 million plus a year." Yeah, I could see a team saying we'll do that, especially if it's a team that's like, "Hey, we're a strong power forward away from contending for the title." Yeah, I could definitely see that. I mean, when you look at the list of teams, right? Because that's the other part of it. We always talk about there has to be somebody willing to pay that. Well, here's the teams that project to have that much kind of cap space. Detroit, maybe, because that would be going home, right, for him. Houston, they're probably not there. Indiana's probably not there. San Antonio, they're probably not going that way. Utah, probably not going that way. I don't think that makes sense for Orlando where they're at. So, yeah, that's the other challenge. Now, the other thing that does exist is sign and trades, right? And teams will have, quite a bit more tax flexibility to maybe do a sign and trade next year. So, yeah, it wouldn't totally shock me if Draymond was, maybe more open to leaving if the Warriors don't feel like, hey, we got to lock in for you like we did for Steph and Clay once upon a time.
I'll tell you what, this is my last thoughts here on this topic before we move on. But if the Warriors go ahead and extend him, you're not just paying Draymond. You are also paying for the harmony that you get by taking care of this situation now, because Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, they're not going to be happy if this is hanging over their heads into the season and becoming an issue, and they want to see their guys taken care of, and on and on and on. So that is part of what the purchase price is here of this contract, is you're getting the harmony, the chemistry, the unity, whatever you want to call it, that comes with getting this done now rather than letting it hang over the team.
Yeah, exactly. That's a great point too. Is like, you have to look at it and basically say, if I'm the Warriors, I'm probably more likely to say, hey, let's just see where things go. I don't feel like I need to lock in today on this. Let's see how the season goes. Let's see how you look this year. How healthy are you by the time we get to the end of what obviously they will hope will be another long playoff run, and let's go from there. So yeah, I don't think it needs to be a full let's do this right now. And I also don't know that he's going to be the kind of guy who's going to be raising a stink about like this has to happen today, right? Like I don't think that's going to be where this goes either.
All right, let's talk a little bit about Kevin Durant and where this is at. And, I had a thought here.
Contractually obligated Kevin Durant talk.
That's right. So here's the thing, right? We had all season, we had the Simmons siren, right? We had that for so long, and we thought it was going to be a short-term thing, and it ended up being a long-term thing. We really should have implemented this already, but we need something for Kevin Durant. And to stick with alliteration, what if, and this may be ridiculous, what if I make a drop that is a Kevin Cannon?
See, you want Kevin Cannon. I was thinking like the Durant Ding, and it was like a
Oh, that
bell
might
or
be
something.
even
Yeah,
better.
I kind of like the Kevin Cannon though. Yeah,
Oh,
yeah. No,
okay.
I like the Kevin Cannon.
Front
I like the
runners,
Kevin
front
Cannon
office.
too, because if someone's like only half listening to the show, they hear this giant cannon, they're probably gonna freak out.
People are going to crash their cars
Well,
if
I
they're
hopefully
listening to
not.
us driving. Um, but everybody, let us know if you're over on YouTube. Fire it off in the comments section. What would you prefer, the Durant Ding or the Kevin Cannon? Let us know what we should make up for that drop. But that said, what's going on with Kevin Durant? We've heard a lot of different rumors. Now hearing that that the Nets may be kind of putting this out there. The Boston Celtics rumors that we heard were perhaps a little bit older than it was implied. That maybe the Nets are putting this stuff out there in order to try to get the ball rolling again on a Kevin Durant trade so they can get it done prior to training camp starting up. What are your thoughts on that situation?
Yeah, it seems like we're kind of in a this is all, I don't want to say old news, but none of this is super fresh, like
Yeah.
just within the last couple days news. If anybody listens to the Low Post, which if you're watching and listening to us, there's a good chance you listen to that podcast too, and it is one of the better ones out there. It's not quite front office show level, let's be honest, because we're the best in the game. But no, Zach is amazing, and obviously his show is amazing too. But it is, he had a thing on there where he was basically, he said something happened around July 16th. So now when he said that, that was I think 2 days ago that he said that 3 days ago. So that was about a week and a half earlier. So that was not quite the early July that we've heard some other
Right.
reporting. But it also wasn't, nothing happened over this past weekend, which is when all the reports started breaking and coming out. So I do think we're in a position with Kevin Durant where what we're seeing here is things probably are pretty stagnant and it's probably pretty quiet. And why this probably to some extent came out was either the Nets or someone else. Because the other thing to keep in mind too is you could have another team that called the Nets and was like, hey, what would you think about this? And then maybe the Nets said, we have a better deal on the table for Boston.
Mhm.
And then maybe the other team was the one who
Sure.
that out there to get movement. Because when we have really, there's 4 big name, big salary players openly on the trade market right now: Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, Donovan Mitchell, Russell Westbrook. Those 4 guys, it's very unusual, obviously, and we almost need one of them to move to start stuff going for the others
Correct.
to start moving. And that's, maybe this was designed around, hey, let's put this out there because we can maybe get something moving on our guy or something like that. So it's really, it's tough, right? We always try to trace back who benefits from this coming out and all that stuff. And sometimes I think we forget it might not even have been either of the 2 teams. Right? I think there is, my understanding of most teams, and I think the Nets are on this list, is they're honest in their negotiations. And if it's, hey, we'll give you, I don't know, the Orlando Magic, we'll give you Jonathan Isaac for Kevin Durant. And if they're like, Jaylen Brown's on the table from Boston, that's just negotiating you in good faith, right? Because you're just trying to move things there. So I do think that is one of the things that could be out there with this. But yeah, I mean, it's all gone kind of quiet. Had a handful of guys at that was a point guards premiere that came out on the Showtime documentary about New York City point guards. Jason Tatum was there, and they asked him, and he's like, I like our team. Very much was like, I don't make those decisions. I'm not going to really answer your questions beyond saying I like our team. I like the guys we added. Durant did not answer any questions. Paul Pierce, who has no say in anything at all, but he was like, don't do it. I don't like it. So yeah, I mean, we're going to, this is going to keep dragging and going until we see, where he ends up.
The NBA trade market is Jenga right now, and Kevin Durant is like that prime piece, right? Where somebody's going to pull that, and the whole thing's going to come undone. That's the way this is right now. You've got so many teams that are held up waiting for something to happen with Kevin Durant, or waiting for something to happen with Donovan Mitchell, or whatever. There's going to be a domino effect whenever one of these things finally gets moved. When these players get sent out and trade, I think there are still a number of moves left to make here in the NBA offseason, but at this, there's no urgency. There's no, like, if there was a trade deadline coming up in 2 days or something, stuff would be getting done right now. But because that doesn't exist and teams are going, training camp's not till the end of September, we got plenty of time. That's why we're just sitting here watching paint dry and nobody's getting anything done.
Yeah, and I think there's more of a deadline, and I'm putting that in quotes for those who aren't watching, around Donovan Mitchell, because I don't think the Jazz want to be good next year.
Correct.
You keep Donovan Mitchell, you're probably going to win a few more games than you ideally want to. I think for the Nets, I don't think they want to bottom out if they trade Durant and Kyrie Irving. I think they would like to still be a competitive team. So I do think for the Nets side is, hey, if we keep them, we'll just keep them and go into training camp. And there is a very much a belief out there that Durant's not the kind of guy who's going to say, all right, I'm going to sit out. Most people seem to believe he will show up and play. Now, if you're the Nets, knowing his age and injury history, do you want him to play? Or are you going to be a little more like, where do we go? And that could run into a late in his time in New Orleans, Anthony Davis and the Pelicans situation, where the Pelicans were like, hey, we have no reason to play this guy. Like, it can only end up bad for us. So yeah, it's definitely, a lot of stuff. But I mean, yeah, it's the end of July. There's no rush on any of this stuff. I think too, my last thoughts on this one is, I think what everybody's waiting for here, whether it's a Kyrie trade, a Donovan Mitchell trade, a Kevin Durant trade, is for the market to get reset on one of those trades so that then they can make the other ones. Because I think what they're a little worried is, I don't think anybody wants to go to the Gobert package necessarily. So I think it's, hey, if you're the Nets, if Mitchell goes first and that resets the market a little bit, right? All right, so they got some good young players and they got a few draft picks. All right, now we can move on a Durant trade and not get killed because we took 2 players in a pick or something like that. So it's one of those things that I think that's holding everything up as well.
That's true. Yeah, what the Wolves gave up, and again, I know Wolves fans are pushing back and trying to defend the trade. It's what teams do what fans do for their team. We saw it last year with Russell Westbrook, and that was disastrous. But I'm not saying that's where this is going. But I think the general consensus around the NBA is that the Wolves massively overpaid for Rudy Gobert in terms of the draft capital that they gave up in that deal, particularly for a guy who has 4 years left on his deal and is 30 years old and all of that. Not saying that it can't work. It could work out fantastically for them. But that draft price, I think, is one that most teams would not have been willing to pay. And now other trades are looking at that saying, we don't want to give up that kind of value. That was a mistake by Minnesota in their valuation. We won't go that way. Whereas teams, if you're a seller, you're saying that's what we want. That's the new market. This is what we need to get. And that's created this kind of log jam here on the trade front.
And I guess I'll add one more thing too to that. Much like Gobert, older player, there's been all this stuff of, can you have him on the floor at the end? It's not like Durant and Mitchell are players without flaws. Durant, when he plays, is incredible, but he's missed considerable time the last 2 seasons after coming back from an injury, and he's now an older player. Donovan Mitchell, highly productive in the regular season, not always as productive in the playoffs, and there is a question, can you win with smaller guards being your offensive fulcrum? Is that something you can do? So as good as these guys are, and by no means am I trying to say they're bad players, there are question marks to where it's very like, and I guess I'll say too, on the Minnesota front, not all trades are created equal, right? The Minnesota Timberwolves are looking at it as a little bit of, hey, we'll overpay in a trade because we're not a free agent destination. We're not going to get guys to necessarily come here and those kind of things. So we'll do that. If you're the Knicks and the Nets, I think you're thinking a little bit of, hey, we'll still be able to recruit players to play here and insert jokes about how the Knicks have failed on that. But they got Jalen Brunson, and that was, he's one of the better free agents actually available this offseason. So yeah, it's definitely something to keep an eye on.
All right. Good point there to wrap that up. Let's jump into some more quick hitter news. Aron Baynes to the Brisbane Bullets. Look, this isn't NBA news. It's just a fantastic story. I mean, given what he went through health-wise, I mean, they weren't sure what was going to happen to him, whether or not he was going to be able to ever play again. I mean,
even walk again.
Yeah. I mean, this was scary stuff that went on. If you don't know the full story, definitely go look it up. There's all kinds of details out there. But the fact that he is actually resuming his playing career after what he went through, is absolutely incredible.
And he has an NBA out. So if he looks really good and NBA teams want him, then he, off he'll go. He'll join an NBA team. And it wouldn't surprise me if we see him pop up on an NBA team by the end of the season. He could be, provided he looks pretty good playing over in Australia and, can do his thing. It would not shock me at all if we see Aron Baynes, show up somewhere for a team who needs a big man, post trade deadline.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. All right. The Raptors made a signing. They wind up with Bo Cruz, which is a nice addition to their team, particularly with his defensive capabilities. And, if you get Adam Sandler as a trainer coming along with him, that doesn't hurt, right?
I mean, you think Philly's going to let Stanley go?
They might.
I don't know. We'll have to see.
They'll
this one is. Here's where, for an actual NBA story, where this gets interesting. Toronto now, for several years running, what they've done, really since Masai Ujiri took over, is they bring in guys and really make it an open competition for their last handful of roster spots. So, like this year, they're bringing in Hernan Gomez. They have Justin Champagny. DJ Wilson is back there again. They have Amar'e Brooks. They have your boy Svi Mikhailuk. Is still there, but so they're gonna. Hey, Pops, Poppy jumping in here to say hello. So they'll bring in these guys and really make it a true open competition for the end of the bench spots there, because I think rather than most teams, what they do with those last 3-4 training camp spots, they bring in guys with the idea of, all right, well, we'll get them off to the G League. The Raptors are giving these guys big enough guaranteed money that then they can't even put them on their G League team. Just refresher for anybody who doesn't know, if you give a guy more than 50,000 guaranteed, you can't then put him on your G League team, right? Because it's kind of like circumventing the G League rules. So with that, so my guess is Hernan Gomez probably got a pretty good chunk of a guarantee here with Toronto, and it's going to be a real open competition for the last couple of roster spots on the 15-man opening night roster for Toronto.
Yeah, we should note for anybody who hasn't seen Hustle over on Netflix. First of all, go watch it. But Bo Cruz is not really what his name is. Juancho Hernan Gomez. That's what we're talking about. There's some people that are probably confused right now. But
probably, who's Bo Cruz?
I still contend that he needs to just change his name to Bo Cruz and just go with it. And
Bo challenge, baby.
That's right. We need to make that happen.
Honestly, if you haven't watched it, if you like our show, you'll clearly like basketball, or you're massive Trevor Lane fans, and that's why you're tuning in. So like, go watch Hustle. It was fun. I like. There were a couple parts where I was like, that's not how that works, right? But that's okay. Put that aside. They did pretty good, and it was a lot of fun.
You do the same thing for draft day. You do the same thing for all the other sports. It's good. Yeah. It's definitely worth checking out. There's this one. Oh wait, I'm sorry. We can't talk about this one.
We don't talk about Bruno.
We don't talk about Bruno.
No.
The Rockets signed Bruno Fernando. So I know, Keith, you had something you wanted to mention on this in terms of the decisions that the Rockets have to make more than just they sign Bruno Fernando.
Yeah, so Houston is in a very interesting spot. Not only have they drafted a ton of guys in the last couple of years, they had 4 first rounders last year, if I remember correctly, right? It was Josh Christopher, Usman Garuba, Alperen Şengün, and of course Jalen Green as the highlight player to that class. But then this year they drafted Jabari Smith, Tari Eason, and Ty Washington. So that's 7 players. That's roughly half of your roster drafted in the last 2 years. But they did a 4-for-1 trade for Christian Wood this offseason, where they brought in Sterling Brown, Trey Burke, Marquise Chris, and Boban Marjanovic in that trade. So basically, you have a full roster's worth of guys here, and they still had guys like Eric Gordon, Kenyon Martin Jr., Kevin Porter Jr., David Nwaba, Jayshawn Tate, who they just re-signed. So Houston right now, they're sitting in a little bit of an interesting spot. 19 players on standard contracts, 18 of which are fully guaranteed deals. But with that, we don't know about Fernando just yet. And then they have one player on a 2-way. So most teams, what they'll do is they'll fill both 2-ways, and then they'll bring 18 players to camp, knowing, all right, we're going to have 3 cuts. that'll happen if we're going to carry 15 guys into the regular season. Houston's going to right now have to cut 4 players, and it's probably going to be 4 guys with guaranteed or at least partially guaranteed money going into camp. So that's going to be something to keep an eye on, because some of those guys are guys who can kind of play, like Sterling Brown, Marquise Chris. It sounds like they maybe are going to keep Boban, because everybody loves Boban, right? So you just
right.
kind of hang on to him there. So, but yeah, just something to keep an eye on. It's a very different kind of situation for Houston, and they're well over the cap at this point, but they have 20 plus million under the luxury tax line. So eating some salary, not a big deal for the Rockets right now. And then just I mentioned them as one of the teams with cap space. As my projections, these will go up on Spot Track later this week. My first look at 2023 cap space projections, because that's how my brain works. We haven't even tipped off the next season. I'm already thinking about the next off season. Houston leads the pack with 70 million in projected cap space for next off season, with all of those guys on their rookie scale deals and all that stuff next year. So
yeah, if they make some noise this year, they could wind up being a player in free agency.
Yeah,
maybe
absolutely could.
Especially if some of these young guys make the leap.
Future's bright there, man. Very
for sure. It definitely is, particularly if we see, if the Nets wind up tearing some things down, and you've got all those future Nets picks too. Ooh,
yeah, absolutely.
That could be a lot. Pretty minor thing here. Most people probably haven't heard of this guy, but James Harden signs with the 76ers. Now, we've talked all about this deal and what it looks like, and how most likely it's probably a little bit of a wink-wink situation where he'll opt out after this season and then get brought back up to that max level, assuming he plays well this season. But nonetheless, it's officially done. James Harden does sign with the 76ers.
Yeah. So now we're in that position where they move right into the next thing here for them. Not only did Harden take less money overall, he left about, it sounds like, around $3 million-ish in wiggle room under the hard cap for the Rockets too, which is massive for them, because that allows them to make in-season moves if they need to. And they've got a couple spots that they're relying on some unproven guys, especially in the front court, depth-wise there. So that's going to be something to check out. I don't think we put it on the rundown, so I want to mention it because it happened yesterday when we didn't record. The Oklahoma City Thunder hired Chip Engelland.
Oh, yes.
From the San Antonio Spurs. Chip Engelland is a longtime NBA assistant. He spent 17 years with the Spurs, the last 17 years with them under Pop. Now he's going to move over to the Thunder under Mark Daigneault this year. He is known as a shooting specialist, arguably the shooting specialist in the NBA. And that is huge, because the Thunder were the worst shooting team in the league last year. They were by far and away the worst three-point shooting team. Now you've got him working with SGA, Josh Giddey, Chet Holmgren, a million of their kids that they've got there. That's pretty big there. I just, when I thought about Rockets' futures bright, I was like, man, the Thunder, we should mention this Chip Engelland hire as well. A guy who's known for rebuilding Kawhi Leonard's shot.
Which is actually bad news for the Lakers, because this is a stat that I've mentioned a bunch on the Lakers Nation side of things. If you take all the Lakers players that are currently on the roster and you transfer over their three-point percentage and volume from their prior season, so Kendrick Nunn from 2 seasons ago, LeBron from last season, Troy Brown Jr. from last season, all of those guys, and just transfer them directly over, the Lakers' three-point percentage is the exact same as the Thunder's last season.
That's not good.
That's not good.
Yeah, that's definitely not good.
That's not good. But good point though on England. I think that's going to be a big thing for the Thunder, and they are also a team with a bright future for sure.
Yeah, man, these teams at the bottom of the league right now, I'm so excited for these teams. Like it's even if they're not good, like you can see clear direction with all these teams. You can see they're all really kind of stacking up and loading up with talent. So yeah, it's good stuff.
Not to steal the spotlight from James Harden, but Jay Huff signs with the Lakers on an Exhibit 10.
You don't like the Lakers, the next half hour of the show is going to be an in-depth, detailed breakdown of Jay Huff's game.
I will say, even over on Lakers Nation, I think we only did 5 minutes on it. But then that's not to say he's an inconsequential player. I thought my big takeaway from Summer League was that he looked like an NBA player. And that's the best you can hope for, really, coming out of Summer League, is that a guy like him who has been in the G League, has developed to the point where he just looks like he's too good for summer league play. And now we'll see what happens in training camp with him. But as we've talked about in the past, Exhibit 10 deals are essentially earmarked to be funneled back to the G League club. In this case, it would be the South Bay Lakers. But he looked really good. He's got floor spacing ability, can block shots like crazy at the rim, and not bad attacking closeouts as well. Better than you would think given his size. But J Huff signs on an Exhibit 10 deal, and then we'll see what he can do in preseason if he can make any noise there. Lakers do have one roster spot available to use. Maybe he can earn it. I tend to think they're going to just leave that spot open, but we'll see.
Yeah, it also, I mean, there's the potential too that they could maybe waive someone like Wenyen Gabriel if J Huff shows up that much better than him. It probably is semi-dependent, at least on how to Thomas Bryant, more Thomas Bryant than Damian Jones. I think Damian Jones is a pretty known quantity at this point, what he's going to be. So it'll be, does Thomas Bryant look really good like the guy he would look like he was becoming before he got injured? Or does he still look a little rough in that? And then maybe you do keep that third big, because I'm really getting the sense with their roster construction, I don't know that they want to do AD at the 5 more than the kind of closing minutes in each half.
Yeah,
I don't think there's a real strong desire to play that, and I don't think it's the worst idea when you play the 5, because you're going to be involved in an awful lot of stuff. It just there's a wear and tear factor on that player. Part of why Boston, and he ended up getting hurt on a fluke play in a game, but part of the reason Robert Williams was able to stay on the floor longer, he played the 5, but he played this kind of roaming defensive role. Right. So he wasn't often involved in pick and rolls. He was kind of just floating around whoever the low man was or the corner man and those kind of things as everybody else switched around that. So, and that kept him near the rim. I think the Lakers, just looking at the way the roster was built out, it screams to me they didn't add a lot of guys that are really 4s in the offseason. They went heavy on guards and wings. Yeah. And that says to me, with adding the 2 centers and now a third in Huff, that says to me if Huff makes the roster, this is designed AD at the 4 primarily, and that's fine with me as long as you close games with him at the 5, which that's probably going to be how that plays out almost no matter what.
And that adds some importance on finding 5s that can space the floor, which Huff can do that. Of course, Thomas Bryant can do that as well.
Yeah, he was showing signs of that. Yep, absolutely. So yeah, I think. And I'm not playing to the Lakers side of our fans here, and I don't do that. This year's signings most of them make infinitely more sense roster construction wise than last year's signings made. I think they've done a much better job building out a functional roster the rest of the way here.
Right. Agreed. All right. Last thing, free agents who are still available. It's not a lot. It's not a lot.
Yeah, and not a lot if you're looking for impact guys. We're just going to kind of run these. These are my rankings, on this. So we're going to run through these quickly. We're not covering everybody because there are still about 90 some odd players still available. But these are mostly the guys who may show up and could snag a rotation spot. So at point guard, you got Dennis Schroeder still out there. We'll see. We know he's made no secret that hey, maybe going back to the Lakers is something he wouldn't mind doing. And honestly, at this point, I don't hate that idea for the Lakers, provided they make a Westbrook trade and all that stuff. Frank Jackson still out there. DJ Augustin is still out there. I thought he actually played okay last year, so it's something there. Isaiah Thomas, he's been mentioned maybe to the Hornets. Kemba Walker has not yet been waived by Detroit, so he's not really on this list, but we'll see. Eric Bledsoe is still out there. Lou Williams, Rajon Rondo. So you've got a mix of scorers there, more pure traditional point guards than that. The best player, I think, still available, pretty clearly, Colin Sexton. Restricted. But we talked
available
about exactly.
Quotes there.
That's the challenge. Is unless you're the Spurs or the Pacers, you probably don't have enough flexibility to make him an offer that makes the Cavs, even blink at matching it.
Right.
Anything else, they're going to go. Wayne Ellington, Avery Bradley are still out there. And then Jeremy Lamb is a guy who could maybe help a team if you have a little wing
surprised
scorer.
He's still out there.
Yeah, I thought somebody might snap him up. Thought he looked okay-ish.
Basically, the Lakers' entire roster from last season is still out there.
which is kind of ammo for like they did better this year, right?
Yeah, right.
It's well, when half the guys that are still available are
Yeah.
guys who not only were they on your roster but playing
But
major
played.
minutes,
Yeah.
like that's probably not a good thing. Because
No.
like Kent Bazemore's still out there too.
Mhm.
But we'll move on. Obviously Miles Bridges is still out there, but nothing's going to happen with
Nope.
that situation for quite some time. Andre Iguodala, but he's going back to the Warriors if he plays at all. Jordan Nwora is a guy I think is kind of interesting.
Mhm.
The Bucks have his restricted rights though, so that's kept teams away from doing anything with him. Josh Jackson, I think Deshaun's probably off Josh Jackson enough now, where I
Yeah.
don't know where that one goes. Sorry, I hope I got that muted.
Yeah, you did.
All right. Cough button, man. I'm starting to figure it out. At the big spots, you've got Carmelo. I think Carmelo can still play.
He'll land somewhere. I think he's waiting for the dust to settle. If he wants to play, he might decide that he's done. But I think that if he's still in, somebody will pick him up.
Yeah, I think he's looking if like the Knicks do like a 3 or 4 for 1 Donovan Mitchell trade.
Mhm.
If the Nets do something where whatever team Durant goes to, they give up 2 or 3. Could maybe even see him, feasibly, like we just said, the Lakers don't have a ton at the 4. I could see if they send out 2 guys in a 2 for 1 trade. Maybe he does come in then with that. Blake Griffin is still out there as well. Kind of similar-ish boat, I think, as Carmelo. Let's let everything settle, and then we'll see. Veteran guy like Paul Millsap, Markieff Morris. We'll see what happens with them. Montrezl Harrell still out there, but again, dealing with some off-court issues with him. So we'll see if that comes. And then you've kind of got the veteran center group of DeMarcus Cousins, LaMarcus Aldridge, Hassan Whiteside, Dwight Howard, and Tristan Thompson. All still available, all still out there. If we want to go a little further, Ed Davis and Greg Monroe are still out there too.
Mhm.
So we'll see where that goes with those guys. But yeah, it's right now we're kind of in a position where it's these guys, the teams are basically full, and these free agents can really be kind of choosy now about picking their spots and say, all right, where is it? Where do I think I have a chance to play? Where can I win? Because the money's going to be the same for basically every single player we just mentioned, minus eventually Colin Sexton will sign for something, even if he just signs a qualifying offer. But every single one of those guys, except for if it gets cleared up, maybe Montrezl Harrell gets part of somebody's exception. All the rest of those guys, they're minimum salary players at this point. So just wait, and then you pick your best spot and go on from there.
That's right. That's right. So again, slim pickings right now on the free agent market, but I mean that's typical for this time of year. What's atypical is that we're still waiting for like major trades to drop. Normally that's not the case right now, but here we are with no sense of exactly when it's going to go down.
And that's the tough thing. Sorry to interrupt you. That's the tough thing for those teams. Like if you like for Boston, for example, they have 3 open roster spots right now, and those aren't those are like regular roster spots. They only have 12 guys under contract and then 2 two-way guys. So you have 3 open regular season roster spots. You do a 3 for 1 trade, you're gonna have 5 roster spots, and there's not much left to fill out a roster with. So that's, I think, why these players are looking at it and saying, a couple of these teams made 3, 4 for 1 trades. There's going to be open roster spots, and all of a sudden I'm going to be raising a hand. Like if I'm Carmelo Anthony, if the Knicks trade Obi Toppin as part of a 3 for 1 deal, then it may look pretty good. Like, hey, I can return back to New York and I can play those 10 minutes a night behind Julius Randle, and there it is, and I can actually help the team in those 10 minutes because Melo had one of, if not the highest true shooting percentage of his entire career last year with the Lakers. He can't defend anybody anymore. He can't move at all, but he can still score, still do all the things he did as a scorer, and he's still a semi-decent rebounder. He can still get on the glass some. So definitely should have a spot in the league, I think.
Just need to let the dust settle and then pick your spot. Go from there.
That's it. Absolutely.
All right. Well, I think that about wraps things up for today. Appreciate everybody for joining us. Make sure you do go check out the NBA Front Office Clips channel. Again, put the link in the description down below. Don't forget also to subscribe to our regular YouTube channel. And of course, follow us over on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever it is that you listen to podcasts. Till next time, everybody. See ya and stay safe.